G-Saviour is Canada's greatest crime against mankind, save for the existence of Quebec. It may not be the worst thing I've seen, or even the worst to come out of Gundam, but it is by far still the most soul-crushing. The fact I watched this instead of Stargazer, Awakening of the Trailblazer, Turn A, or literally anything else is something I'm still coming to terms with. Think I'm losing my mind. I knew it was going to be bad, just not in the way it ended up being. G-Saviour isn't the misguided ravings of a madman, which can be fun in its own right. The film simply lacks heart. It isn't so bad it's good or even competently mediocre. Instead, it sits between the two as an unentertaining slog. Since this is where the UC effectively ends, well, ends if you exclude Mad Wang, it should be abundantly clear to everyone that Zeon did in fact do nothing wrong. One more colony drop, and we could have averted this travesty. Several more, and we'd have gotten After War X. Huh. Who knows? Perhaps there was another, and that's why G-Saviour uses interior sets almost exclusively. It may be a little thing to gripe about, but after an hour and a half of steel walls, gray floors, and dull flat lighting, well, it's enough to drive me crazy, especially when paired with acting of an equally bland caliber. Hell, a part of me wonders if the sun burnt out, because anytime the film does get a bit spicy and goes outside, it's almost exclusively during the night. Save for this little moment right here. I'd recommend no one watch G-Saviour. It's an utter waste of time. However, if you're curious to know what happens, for some masochistic reason, then I'll explain real quick. Don't worry, we won't be here all that long. After the Earth Federation collapses, an event infinitely more interesting than the movie itself, a faction known as the Congress of Settlement Nations, or Consent for short, why, rises to take its place. Earth and most of the sides end up joining. However, the Moon and a select few colonies remain independent and form the Settlement Freedom League. Don't worry, none of this is actually explained, and for some reason, colonies are now called settlements. The main takeaway here is the Federation is now, more or less, just Space America, led by President Pork.
Stave off the food shortage. President Pork is coming under increasing pressure to use military force.
Hey, those of you who are unfortunate enough to suffer through this travesty, do you remember that riveting ball scene? The one where nothing actually happens. Well, it made me realize the ball may be the single greatest mobile suit in all of Gundam. Everyone recalls the goof and all of its awesome duels. Rightfully so, I might add. But no one seems to give the ball any credit. Every time it's on screen, with little to no exception, a truly badass or great moment is unfolding. Be it the final battles in Mobile Suit Gundam, or Shiro being an absolute Chad in 08th MS Team. Oh my god, I'd kill for some balls right about now. What's worse is the Earth sphere is suffering from a massive food shortage, something which doesn't make a ton of sense to me. With the wealth of mineral resources in space, you'd think they'd be able to construct enough agricultural colonies to alleviate this problem, something which was done earlier in the Universal Century. Ordinarily, this issue wouldn't bother me, but it winds up being the film's central conflict.
Mimi, have the Philippe margaritas with the rest of us. Please?
Cynthia, I really resent you ordering my drinks, thank you.
Oh my god! A bunch of scientists from the colony of Gaia set out to retrieve an experimental bioluminescent enzyme that allows for underwater agriculture from a rig where G-Saviour's main character, Mark, works. From here, Mark gets roped into the scientists' plot and escorts them to Gaia. Eventually, the Consent, catch wind of this and send a warship to take back the enzyme. The reason for doing so not being a desire to control it for the good of their people, but rather to selectively starve the population. A perfectly sane plan, completely sound, with no flaws whatsoever. doing such a thing has never backfired. Oh, and there's a mobile suit battle at the end. That, with very little exaggeration, is the entirety of G-Saviour's plot. It's an incredibly simple, straightforward, and dry story which lacks character. Sure, there are people on screen who say things, but they leave no lasting impression. They, like the film itself, don't have an identity. They're cardboard cutouts found in any straight-to-video movie. If anything, this is G-Saviour's biggest problem in a nutshell. Once you remove mobile suits, it feels like a generic sci-fi film, as opposed to feeling like Gundam. Mecha, at its core, is a very character-driven genre. The plot and world are meant to challenge the cast, make them change. G-Saviour spends such an excruciating amount of time on exposition and the magical enzyme nonsense that it misses this simple idea. They made a bad Star Trek episode instead of doing Saving Private Ryan with mechs. Doesn't help that the action, well, what little there is, also kinda sucks. Dated CGI aside, I understand that aspect of it. The mobile suit battle at the end just doesn't feel like a mobile suit battle. It's just too clunky, slow, and claustrophobic. It lacks a sense of scale, of verticality, because there's little to no choreography for its fight. People just kinda stand there and shoot. Something that's interesting to note is how new types are entirely absent in G-Saviour, despite them still being present in Victory. Gives me the sense God has truly abandoned humanity at this point in the Universal Century. Rita's had enough of its shit. Actually, hold on. Oh my god.
What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.
闇の中心揺さぶる目覚め始まる大地割りそそり立つ姿正義の証か
G-Saviour isn't a mere movie, but a masterpiece. Disregard everything I've just said, for this experience is the key to unlock the truth. Reveal that which sparked the correct century. Don't you see? Mankind has become depraved and stupid once more. That is why new types, the children of the god Gigantus, of Ideon, have vanished. The cycle of destruction is set to repeat once more. Now I can hear some of you asking, Boo, what the hell are you talking about? For I no doubt sound like a madman. Well, you see, amidst the events of Victory Gundam, in a side story not put to animation, Uso meets an old man going by the name of Gray Stoke. Said old man is in fact an incognito Judo Ashita, the protagonist of Gundam Double Zeta. In his possession is not only the finest mobile suit known to man, the Gump, but also an entire colony filled with new types in cold sleep set to leave the solar system for Proxima Centauri. The state of the Universal Century has made it abundantly clear. Mankind will not put aside war, despite the understanding new types are able to reach. Therefore, the only course of action left is to leave. Abandon those trapped within Soul to their fate. By doing this, Judao accidentally sets into motion a series of events he's seen before, as revealed in an alternate timeline of UC, namely in Mobile Suit vs. Giant God of Legend, Gigantus's counterattack. What a mouthful. Judao is the reincarnation of Cosmo Yuki, Amafro, the previous pilot of the Gigantus, of the Ideon. The Universal Century was brought into being following the events of Space Runaway Ideon, with new types being a supposedly enlightened rebirth of mankind brought about by this machine. In the alternate timeline of UC, the Ideon is recovered by a group of Zeon who just so happen to stumble across it. After realizing humanity is still killing itself, Despite what was supposed to be an enlightened rebirth, it goes on a rampage, which Amuro, Char, and Judao put an end to. Now, for G-Saviour, this is important to keep in mind, since this is, supposedly, still mainline UC, and Mobile Suit Versus is certainly a very, very canon source. Idion's rampage has yet to happen. Though, since the intent behind new types has still failed, with them fleeing the solar system, it's only a matter of time.
I'll lose jet propulsion.
Jet propulsion's no good down here.
Come UC 653, Proxima Centauri is colonized. Come Mad Wang, UC 1160, the Solar Federation is established. Though humanity pushes ever further into the stars, conflict continues to follow. Much like before, the Gigantus, the Idion, will be uncovered, and it will strive to bring about the end upon seeing mankind's failure. However, this time, something of comparable power stands in its way. What is that something, you may ask? Well, dear viewer, don't you see? It's the time-traveling agent of man itself, the gold-plated Gundam, the Phoenix. This machine, which can bring about a technological singularity, this weapon with the power of God only the creation of new types could tap into, is the only thing which could stand in the way of the Idion. These two are destined to fight, for one wishes to preserve a future's hope, while the other wants it erased to create something better. Wait a minute. Beyond the time. Those clever bastards. With its ability to travel across time and turn it back upon weapons of war, the Phoenix would prove to be a worthy foe for the Idion. Yet, the instrument once called Gigantus is not without tremendous feats of its own. Namely, the power of Id, whatever. No doubt an event which sees the universe undone would be brought about, with both the Phoenix and Idion employing the tools at their disposal upon colliding. The universe would tremble, time fluctuate, and at the end, both would neither be victorious nor defeated, yet destroyed all the same. A new era would be brought into being, a timeline born of countless alternate universes colliding, as the powers of the Phoenix and Idion mixed. The correct century would exist as a compromise between the two opposing views. It would be built off the back of what came before, allowing it to persist as something new. From this point onward, the future would be allowed to push on unimpeded by Idion's will, with a moonlit guardian remaining ever vigilant, preventing something such as that fated machine to exist again. The film, which acts as a key to this revelation, lampshades the fatal duel with its very name, G-Saviour. The absence of new types was the key to uncovering how the correct century came into being. It was foreshadowing the Gundam only beings such as that could bring about. It is by no mere coincidence that Turn A and G-Saviour came out together as a part of Mobile Suit Gundam's 20th anniversary. They are interlinked, two parts of a greater whole which tells a grand story worthy of being called a masterpiece, instead of being a truly miscalculated endeavor on Bandai's end, which no one should waste their time watching.